In Chile's Atacama desert, the driest place on earth, silence stretches endlessly across a wilderness of stone. The land is harsh, merciless, devoid of softness or comfort. Winds sweep across the plains, carrying nothing but dust and an emptiness that feels eternal. For centuries, the desert has stood as a place where life struggles to exist. A land that seems determined to resist human presence. Beneath this barren land lay the San Jose mine, a narrow scar plunging deep into the earth. To outsiders, it was nothing more than a hole in the ground. But for the men who entered it each day, it was survival itself. A fragile lifeline for their families, carved from stone and forever shadowed by danger. For years the mine had been plagued by broken safety rules, warnings ignored, and accidents quietly buried in reports. It was an open secret, everyone knew the risks, but poverty left few choices. Still, each morning men pulled on their helmets, kissed their children goodbye, and descended into darkness. They were fathers keeping food on the table, husbands carrying the weight of their homes, sons daring to carve out a future from rock. On August 5, 2010, 33 miners began what seemed like another ordinary shift. Nearly 700 meters down, their helmet lamps cut narrow cones of light into the tunnels. Boots echoed against stone walls slick with dust and sweat. The heat was stifling, pressing against their lungs, and clinging to their skin with every breath. For them it was routine, another day beneath the earth. That afternoon everything changed. The ground trembled. At first, only a faint groan, the kind of sound every miner knew too well. Then, without warning, the mountain roared with a deafening blast. A massive block of stone, weighing nearly 700,000 tons, collapsed with unstoppable force. The air filled with choking dust, helmet lights bounced wildly in the chaos. Men shouted, coughed, stumbled blindly, desperate for air. They rushed toward the ramps, the escape routes. They trusted, but every path was sealed tight with rock and debris. The ladders that might have saved them had not been properly installed. Within minutes, the miners realized a truth more suffocating than the dust itself. They were trapped, nearly 700 meters below the world above. Panic surged. Some cried out for their families. Others dropped to their knees and whispered prayers into the dark. Amid the chaos, one man stepped forward. Luis Urzua, the foreman, raised his voice calm, firm, and steady. He ordered the men to regroup, to conserve their strength, and to move toward the refuge chamber. A small, reinforced shelter carved into the rock. Inside the refuge they took stock. A few cans of tuna, some biscuits, a little milk. Rations meant for a handful of men, not 33. Enough, at best, for 2 days. Silence settled heavy as they looked at one another. Urzua set the rules strict, rationing one spoonful at a time. One small sip of water each. No exceptions. Discipline, he said, would keep them alive. Darkness pressed like a weight. Hours blurred into days, and days into weeks. There was no sunrise, no sunset. Only the flicker of lamps and the suffocating heat. Temperatures inside the chamber rose to more than 30 degrees Celsius. Sweat soaked their clothes, and the air grew sour and stale. Water was the greatest trial. They drained bitter liquid from machine radiators, metallic and unsafe. But their only choice. Each swallow burned, yet none dared waste a drop. Every creak of shifting rock made their hearts stop. Another collapse could bury them forever. And yet, in the darkness, sparks of humanity flickered. They told stories of home. They whispered their children's names. They sang softly to keep their spirits alive. Each night, led by the eldest miner, 63-year-old Mario Gomez, they gathered to pray. His steady voice reminded them that they were not alone. His faith carried the younger men through their weakest hours. Above ground, families refused to leave. They built tents at the mine's entrance, and raised banners that fluttered against the desert wind. They named the site Campamento Esperanza, the Camp of Hope. Mothers held vigils through the night. Children wrote letters. Wives clung to one another. Engineers worked feverishly, drilling boreholes and testing paths to the trapped men. But shafts veered off course and machines broke. Failure piled on failure, and hope began to fray. 17 days passed. Deep underground, the miners felt a faint vibration through the rock. The hum of machinery. They pounded back on the walls, with pipes and rocks, sending their own desperate signals. Moments later, dust rained down as a drill bit pierced through. The men tied a note to the probe written in bold red ink. It read, "Estamos bien en el refugio. Lost 33. We are well in the refuge, all 33 of us." When rescuers pulled the note to the surface, the desert erupted. Families screamed with joy. Mothers wept, clutching the paper to their hearts. Across the world, television screens carried the words after more than 2 weeks entombed. 33 men were alive. The narrow borehole became a fragile lifeline. Through thin tubes called palomas, doves, rescuers sent down glucose, medicine, lights, letters, and even small cameras. The first video of the miners shocked millions. Gaunt faces, hollow eyes. Yet they smiled and waved. In front of the lens, Mario Sepulveda, nicknamed Super Mario, grinned and joked. "Tell my wife I'm fine though I've lost a few pounds." His humor rippled through the refuge and proved their spirits remained unbroken. Above ground, Camp Hope swelled into a small city of tents, flags, and prayer. Hymns drifted into cold desert nights. Strangers arrived to support the families. Journalists broadcast every detail. For once, global headlines were not about conflict or scandal, but about hope and solidarity. Engineers pursued 3 rescue strategies. Plan A was slow. Plan C was massive and risky. Plan B, using the SRAM T-130 drill, advanced fastest. Still, danger loomed. Shafts could collapse. Drills could break. Time could run out. Inch by inch the drill cut through unforgiving rock. Deep inside the refuge, order held. Urzua rotated responsibilities to keep men busy. They exercised, cleaned, and maintained hygiene as best they could. Gomez sustained their faith. Sepulveda kept laughter alive. "We are not dead men," Sepulveda declared. "We are men waiting to live again." That resolve steadied them through the long days. At last, after 69 days underground, the SRAM drill broke through. The chamber filled with cheers and tears as men embraced one another. Above ground, engineers prepare the rescue capsule. Known as Phoenix, a narrow, cylindrical capsule painted with a Chilean flag. Fitted with oxygen and built to carry 1 man at a time through 700 meters of rock. On October 13, 2010, the rescue began. The capsule descended, and minutes later it rose again, carrying Florencio Avalos, the first miner to feel fresh air on his face in more than 2 months. He stepped out weeping as his young son rushed into his arms. The desert thundered with applause. One by one the men followed. Sepulveda emerged laughing and tossed small rocks to the crowd as souvenirs. 19-year-old Jimmy Sanchez smiled shyly despite exhaustion. The eldest, Mario Gomez, dropped to his knees and prayed, fingers pressed to the earth. At last Luis Urzua, the foreman who had promised to be the last, climbed out. True to his word, he entered the light only after every man was safe. For nearly 22 hours the capsule rose and fell. Then it was over. All 33 men were free. Not one life was lost. The world rejoiced. Families embraced. Church bells rang. Across continents, people called it a miracle. Yet the real miracle was not only in drills and machines. It lay in the discipline, leadership, solidarity, and faith of 33 men who refused to surrender. Their story became a symbol of resilience, a lesson in what people can endure and achieve when they stand together. In the months that followed, the miners traveled the world, met with leaders, and told their stories on television. Some wore visible scars, others carried quieter wounds. The San Jose mine never reopened. Questions about safety, corporate responsibility, and justice lingered, prompting changes and renewed scrutiny across the industry. One miner later reflected with quiet conviction, "Down there, we were not 33 miners. We were 33 brothers. And we promised each other that none of us would die." That promise and the flesh and blood reality of it is the heart of this story. And so, in the silence of the Atacama Desert, where winds sweep across endless stone, their story lives on, a story of hope, faith, and the human spirit rising like a phoenix, even from 700 meters below the earth. You have been watching this story on True Uplift. Subscribe for more true stories that inspire the world.